once again. I'm Phoenix Crockett, Managing Director of the Me2 Orchestra of Burlington. And what a great crowd. Thank you guys for all coming out when the weather is not nice, as it sometimes tends to be in May in Vermont. For those of you who have not been with us tonight, what is the Me2 Orchestra of Burlington, Vermont? We are a mental health advocacy-based classical music orchestra. We play a couple of shows a year, sometimes in halls like this, and sometimes in other kinds of venues like the airport or outdoors, or at prisons or schools or things like that, especially next season, which you'll hear more about later in this show. But we come together each week on Tuesday nights, and we enter what we like to call our stigma-free zone. Now, what does that mean? There's obviously an awful lot of stigma related to mental illnesses in our society. We know this. And it's getting better because of advocacy groups and because of social change, right? But it can still be very difficult for a lot of people. So some musicians want a space where they, living with their diagnoses, or they being people who support those who do, can come together each week and make awesome music together. One of our exciting announcements that I get to debut to all of you tonight at this show is that we will no longer be only the Me2 Orchestra of Burlington. Starting next season, we will also be a chorus that will be rehearsing and performing and doing other things. More on that in our email blasts. Sign up for those if you haven't gotten them already. But ultimately, we are super, super dedicated to providing awesome music and a space for musicians to go and practice and perform that music. And you guys are all part of that zone tonight, and I super duper appreciate it. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Maestro for the evening, Michael Kohlberg.
so much for joining us, especially as Phoenix mentioned on such a dark and stormy night. We greatly appreciate the fact that you came out to share some music with us this evening in a program that we have titled The Hills Are Alive. Now, you may think you know exactly how to complete that sentence, and certainly one of the ways to complete it is with the sound of music, and we're going to get there, but we want to spend some time thinking about other things that the hills are alive with this time of year. Alive with blossoming trees and shrubs, alive with returning birds and other sounds of nature, many of which you may have heard in the piece that we just played for you by the Austrian composer Karl Goldmark. Goldmark is a name that's not all that well known to many Americans. He was a contemporary of Brahms and Wagner, very, very active and well known in Austria, but not as well known in America. But there were a few conductors who really championed his work. And one of those was Arthur Fiedler, longtime conductor with the Boston Pops. And he loved this overture in springtime and programmed it often with that orchestra. And we're happy to share that music with you here this evening. We're going to move on now to the music of a name that is familiar to those of you who are fans of band music, undoubtedly, and that is Percy Aldridge Grainger. But that's a name that's not as familiar to a lot of orchestra fans, because most of Grainger's biggest hits, if you will, were written for and played by band. But Grainger actually got his start as a solo pianist. He was born in Australia. He trained in Germany and then tried to launch his career in England. Very, very successful pianist. In fact, the next work that you're going to hear by Edvard Grieg, Grieg wrote a very famous piano concerto, the Piano Concerto in A minor. And his very favorite soloist for that concerto was Percy Grainger. But Grainger came to the United States during World War I. He kept working his way eastward and ended up in the United States during World War I and ended up enlisting in an army band during that conflict, which really ended up becoming a blessing for Grainger's musical career, because as much as he loved playing the piano, his true calling was as a composer, he felt. And he'd written some things for orchestra that had gotten some attention, but while he was with this army band, which was attached just outside of New York City, he had a chance to learn the band. He was a band member. He learned how to play the saxophone and a number of other instruments, including, of course, the piano, which he already played. But most importantly, during that time, they were more than willing to let him use them as a guinea pig. And so he kept trying out different arrangements and different compositions with that band, including the work that you're about to hear, his Children's March, which is subtitled Over the Hills. There's that hill idea coming back, and Far Away. So he scored this work for band, but it really was quite popular almost as soon as it was written. And so Adolf Schmidt actually scored this for chamber orchestra in the version that you're going to hear tonight. This is Percy Grainger's Children's March. So I mentioned Edvard Grieg a moment ago and his relationship with Percy Grainger. And Grieg, of course, was a Norwegian composer. And when he was approached by his countryman Henrik Ibsen about the idea of writing incidental music for a play that Ibsen was writing called Gynt, Grieg didn't really think it was a good fit. He felt that he and Ibsen were very different personalities. He thought that Ibsen's play, the way it had been described to him, was a little crass, a little vulgar, and he just didn't think he was the right guy for the job. But he decided to take it on anyway. And even in the early stages of writing the music for this play, he wrote to various friends saying, I just don't think I don't think I'm cut out for this. I just don't think his music is very good. Well, that was a case where Grieg was really wrong. The music and the play both became classics. And shortly after this incidental music appeared with the play, Grieg created these suites so the music could exist on its own. There are a couple of different suites. We're going to play suite number 1 for you tonight. It begins with a wonderful depiction of a Norwegian sunrise called Morning Mood, followed by a movement called Asa's Death. Asa was Peer Gynt's mother, and this was her confronting the reality of her death. It's a movement scored for strings only. The third movement is Anitra's dance. It's a dance of seduction, a little bit of Eastern flavor to it, and really just very charming music. And then we finish up with perhaps the best known movement of this suite, In the Hall of the Mountain King. The Mountain King was a dwarf king, and Grieg knew that he needed to make this, again, a little vulgar, a little crass, and he said he knew he was succeeding when, as he was writing this music. He said, I can almost smell the cow, and I'll let you fill in the rest of the blank. So he achieved his goal in a very memorable way in the last movement of the Peer Gynt Suite number 1. We're going to continue now with the music of American composer Aaron Copland. An excerpt from a ballet that he wrote for Martha Graham back in 1944 entitled Appalachian Spring. It is variations on a Shaker melody. That's the title it's known by. And at the time that Copland decided to use this particular work in the ballet, as hard as it may be for us to believe these days, this tune was hardly known by anyone. It was a tune that was very important, of course, to the Shaker faith. It was actually written by an elder from the Shaker faith back in 1848. And when Copland was doing research on folk music for this ballet and came across this tune, he knew he found something really special. And so he decided to pull this particular chunk of music, this excerpt of music out of the ballet, and to score it for a couple of different types of ensembles. He actually created an arrangement for a concert band, and also this particular arrangement, which he wrote for a slightly scaled down orchestra. He wanted to make sure this piece was playable by community orchestras, smaller groups. He wanted to make sure that this music was playable by as many different ensembles as possible. And we are so grateful that he did that, because we really enjoyed working on this lovely, evocative music, variations on a Shaker hymn from, our Shaker melody from Appalachian Spring.
it's my turn again. Hi everyone. Once more, I am Phoenix Crockett, Managing Director of this group. A couple things I wanted to mention. Firstly, we are partnered tonight with Outright Vermont, a group which supports LGBT youth in our greater community. We saw a set of materials, a campaign go out earlier this year called Celebrating Queer Joy. And we thought, hey, we do that. So can you wave if you're at all affiliated with Outright tonight? A few of you here with us? Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. It's so good to have you. So good to have you. And they put on camps and talks and community groups. There's things happening all the time, so please do check out their materials out here and their website as well. One of our traditions that we have done for almost all of our 13 years together is in the middle of shows, we like to do a little Q&A, because it might not be obvious what we do or why from attending one of our shows, and I do see there are new faces in our groups tonight. I try to answer the questions. I think I usually get about half of them, and the rest I kick back to this lovely group, many of whom are people who have been with the group a lot longer than I have, or have played music a lot longer than I have, or are generally smarter than me. So, who wants to be the brave person that asks the first question? Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm just looking through Michael Goldmark's list of incredible accomplishments.
Isn't he great? I love him.
And wondering what brings you to Burlington and to the Me2?
So I am originally from Vermont. I'm from St. Albans, Vermont. Spent much of my career in other parts of the country, but always longed to come back home. My wife, Nancy, who's in the crowd there, is also from Vermont. And so we decided a few years ago it was finally time. It was time to come back home. And when we were coming home, I just was reading the Burlington Free Press in my office one day and saw that there was this group called Me2, and they were looking for a new director. And once I read about their mission, I thought, boy, that sounds like something I could really get behind. A chance to share my music with this incredible organization, and it's really been a perfect fit. I auditioned and they accepted me, which I was delighted about. Started in the fall of 2022, so I just finished up my second year, 2 years.
Who else? Yes, Richard. What is the age range of our group? You know, that question actually comes up a lot because we've had some pretty impressive ones over the years. I think 12 to 92 was the greatest that we ever had. I think we have something more like a 35 or 40 year range right now. But we like to have as many different kinds of people that we can get in the group as possible. So thank you, Richard. Yes.
I see some new faces in the orchestra. Is that just me? Are there new people with this noise?
New faces in the orchestra. Raise your hand if this is your first time playing with a Me2 show. Beautiful. Other questions we have from the group? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us more about the choir?
Oh yeah, the chorus. We're going to be having a singing group. This is something that has been thought about for a very long time. And this year, a delightful man named Chip Seiler, who's the current president of NAMI Vermont, said, "Hello, would you like money to make it happen?" And I said, "Yes, thank you." And so we've only just in the past couple of weeks started booking space to rehearse in and thinking about who is going to be part of it. What's great about a choir is that you don't have to be a singer or be someone that sings to be a part of it. We all have a voice in here somewhere, and what we really want is as many people as possible to be part of this singing group, to come and get together and make music. We do not have any staff assigned yet. We don't have music picked out. We know that I'm in charge, which is always fun. We like that. Yes?
I want to speak on the Boston one, too.
Oh, yeah, awesome. We already have one in Boston, which is great because, of course, we have our Boston Orchestra and also our Boston Flute Choir and whatever else it is they're doing over there. They have so many fun groups. And there's going to be a choir the following season in our Manchester group as well. So, yes. We have no auditions, no fees, no stigma, as always. Anyone who wants to show up can come and play. As you've heard tonight, the repertoire that we play does tend to sit at a certain level, so some people play at that level, some people read along, some people show up and don't play in our shows, some people come and completely crush it and become leaders in our groups, but we don't have any auditions. In fact, if you play the violin and you want to join tonight, please let me know.
We got some chairs.
Anybody else? Then we are going to keep things moving. I will kick it back to Michael Colburn.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us this evening. You've been a wonderful audience. It's a little warm and muggy in here, which I know is not always conducive to the concert experience. It's kind of a challenge for some of our instruments too, right? But we're soldiering through and having a wonderful time, and I hope you are as well. We're going to finish up the program with the music of Richard Rodgers. The title that was suggested by the title of our program, The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. This is Robert Russell Bennett's setting of several tunes from the Broadway show. And I mention that because Robert Russell Bennett was not just someone who created arrangements for bands and orchestras, he was actually the orchestrator for so many of the great Broadway hits of the early 20th century. And so he is really the perfect person to create these medleys, these showcases for orchestras and bands, for shows like Richard Rodgers, Cole Porter, George Gershwin. He worked with all the greats. And really, there was nobody better at orchestrating these tunes than Robert Russell Bennett. So we hope you enjoy Richard Rodgers, The Sound of Music, and Robert Russell Bennett's classic setting.
Thank you.